When I was a kid, people actually took time off in the summer, including the people making TV shows that ran on the 4 stations that we had back then. So in the summer, we got reruns. Here at Qiological, we're taking the month of July to, as they say here in Missouri, go fishing. I'm looking at it as some yin-tonification in the middle of the greatest yang of the year. So for the month of July, I've got some reruns for you that you've likely not heard because they are some of my favorite conversations from the early days. You may or may not know that before Qiological, I did a podcast called Everyday Acupuncture. It was aimed at the general public, and so we didn't get all deep and geeky with the medicine, but it turns out a lot of acupuncturists listen to Everyday Acupuncture, and it was your interest that sparked Qiological. So I hope that you'll enjoy these pre-heaven conversations from before Qiological was Qiological. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out the new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AcuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com. And where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, That number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
One of the wonderful things about recorded podcast conversations is that they allow us to capture a moment. Today's conversation is with Njemile Carroll Jones. I first met Njemile when we were both in acupuncture school and feel so lucky to have been able to call her my friend for such a long time. She passed away a couple years ago, and I do sorely miss her. She always had compassionate and honest-to-the-bone advice when I'd lean on her for some counsel. This conversation is from the very early days of Everyday Acupuncture. I had no idea at the time that we recorded this that years later be republishing this conversation, and so grateful for this opportunity to share Njemile's thoughts, perspectives, and spirit. Listen up, y'all. You're in the presence of a wise woman here. Njemile, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here and sharing this time with you.
Yeah. So you got a really interesting name, Njemile.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from?
Well, in my research and from a few other Njemiles I've met on Facebook, the origin of the name is from the East Africa, southern part of Africa, even though it has kind of a West African sound. And from everything I've read in the short meaning of it is that it's a name given to encourage one to honor her beliefs, to live with integrity. And someone talked to me about how that means, like in a strong wind, being a tall, strong tree that bends in the wind but doesn't break, but does bend.
Yeah.
That part's important.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Fragility doesn't really serve any of us, does it?
No, because you'll just snap.
Yeah. All right. So you're an acupuncturist and an herbalist.
Yes.
And you work with fertility.
Well, I do assist people who want to have babies, but I think of my practice as much broader than that. It's more generally reproductive medicine, specifically OBGYN conditions. There's so much that Chinese medicine can do to assist people with their fertility, and I came to this because of how it helped me with my periods. And so I was really fascinated with how well Chinese medicine can assist people with all kinds of reproductive problems. I was really struck by the specifics of how Chinese medicine can address a broad array of reproductive problems easily.
Yeah.
And so while a lot of my patient base is fertility patients, I do have other women and men who come in for other kinds of reproductive issues, and I like to treat those.
Right. One of the things that was really surprising to me when I was studying Chinese medicine, because when I first started to study it, I just knew I was interested in acupuncture, but I didn't realize the incredible treasure trove of information and practice for women's health.
Yes.
And it blew my mind to have women come in and to find out, well, first of all, what a woman's cycle was like, or what it should be, and how often it wasn't. And the amazing changes that would happen, often very, very quickly.
Oh, yes, very quickly. I experienced that myself.
Tell us about your experience.
Well, I worked for many years as a public radio producer on national news shows, and I worked on a show that went on the air, NPR Morning Edition. It went on the air at 6 in the morning, and so that meant the production staff had to work all night. So I was going into work at midnight or 1 in the morning until 9 or 10 in the morning, and you had to come in functioning at high speed
In the middle of
in
the
the
night.
middle of the night. And there's a lot of coffee and a lot of snacks and things to kind of keep you going. So that meant I was constantly taking in stimulants when I was supposed to be sleeping. And so I had a lot of trouble sleeping. I had a lot of moodiness and irritability. And I noticed that my menstrual periods were getting really unbearable, like painful.
So
And
prior to that, they'd been okay.
yeah.
Ah.
So it really got exacerbated when I was on this all night work schedule. And I was learning a lot about production. And in my off hours, I was doing a lot of independent projects, trying to get skills at being a better producer. So I kind of jumped in and did all kinds of projects and more things I had time for. So that meant I was getting less sleep. So sometimes I was staying up 16, 18, 20 hours a day, working on projects and doing my job. And my periods were getting worse and worse and worse. And the stress level I was feeling kept getting heightened. And so one day I was just looking through a newspaper, a local kind of new age newspaper, and I saw a photograph of a man from China doing Tai Chi on the beach. There was these beautiful waves in the background and a sunset. So that pulled me in. And I read the description of how Tai Chi could address your stress level, make you feel relaxed, help you sleep better. And he was having a class the next week. So I said, oh, I'm going to do that because the description felt so authentic to what I was experiencing. And I felt like in looking at the photograph, this guy knows what he's talking about. So
You were drawn to it. Now, I'm curious if, and this will get a little personal maybe, were you doing like medications to help with sleep and that sort of stuff in addition to the stimulants? Or
no medications or anything like that. I had gone to a doctor who gave me some suggestions about vitamins to help me with the stress, and they were helping, but my periods were still pretty unbearable. So I was really at that point, I think, looking for something to help me feel more at home in my body, to relax more. And so when I saw this photograph, Dr. Lee looked really at home in his body. His name is Njemile, and he's a Tai Chi instructor here in Maryland here. So I went to his class, and he'd been in the States from Beijing. He was an acupuncturist trained in Beijing and had studied Tai Chi and Qigong for many, many years. But he'd been here about 3 or 4 years, I think. And so he wasn't speaking a lot of English. He didn't talk to us. He demonstrated the movements and encouraged us to do them softly and to open our joints so we could feel the flow of the chi. And I was really feeling this softening and tingling in my hands and my feet. And I like that feeling. I had a hard time with the focus and the concentration because my to-do list kept popping into my head.
I'll bet it did.
All these things. And sometimes I used to struggle with focusing during the class. But
so it's a very meditative,
yeah,
very meditative sort of physical activity.
and the way he taught, because he didn't speak a lot, there was a lot of repetition. And, you know, my mind wanted stimulation. So there was always a kind of a tussle. But I gradually found myself surrendering to this. Just do the movement, just repeat it. And so I continued to go. And there was another student in the class. Sometimes there was only, she and I were the only ones there. And she would stay and assist him with different things, and they got to be pretty close, eventually fell in love and got married. So he continued to teach, and she assisted him with setting up an office. and he began to offer acupuncture treatments.
Mm.
And I was so impressed with how I felt when I practiced the Tai Chi and Qigong. And sometimes it was just that 1 hour a week when I could just forget about all my concerns and just get into my body with these simple flowing movements.
Now, even with that 1 hour a week, were you noticing any changes in your moods or in your stress or how you were dealing with things at work?
And mostly in my moods and in my ability to focus and not have so many things on my mind at one time and not having my thoughts jump from thing to thing to thing and being able to focus and finish something because sometimes I would just, for 2 or 3 minutes in the midst of some assignment, I just kind of wave my hands make sure my joints were open.
Ah.
I just give myself a little taste of the chi for a few seconds. And
Brief, I wonder, do you know if anyone has looked into using Tai Chi for like ADHD and that sort of thing? It sounds extremely helpful for increasing focus.
possibly, I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, oh, I'm going to try acupuncture. And I totally trusted him. I never had any misgivings or worries about needles sticking or anything like that, or I'm afraid of needles. I didn't have any of that. I just wanted to try it. I was so struck by how this simple movement could make my body feel and help my mind feel calm that I wanted to know more. So the first time I went, he asked me about my general health, and I started telling him about how painful my periods were, and he took that information into account and took my pulse, and he looked at my tongue. And again, he never talked.
Mm-hmm.
He barely said anything, but he did a lot with his chi in those treatments. And he needled me. When he was locating the points on my body, it was like he was just kind of drawing these lines and deciding. He took his time and decided where the needle was going to go. And then I usually would start to feel this kind of heaviness in my limbs that was more intense than when I practiced Tai Chi. And I noticed that I would sometimes not be quite asleep, but not be quite awake, but just kind of go into another zone.
It's a really interesting place, isn't it? It's not really sleep, but it's deeply settling.
But I was really struck with how transformative it was because I had a lot of things going on personally and professionally. And whenever I would get up after a treatment, I always felt like so much stuff had just lifted out of me that fast, and I felt much clearer. Like when I was trying to find some answers for things, they came much more clearly. My creative life was really inspired. Like I got a lot of ideas that would just come to me quickly because I guess things were much more in order. As a practitioner now, I understand more about how that works. But at that time, it was just really fascinating.
Sure. And kind of mind-blowing too, isn't it?
Yeah. And I noticed that the work I was doing was much more interesting and felt more life-giving. And I felt more willing to connect with people that I was interviewing and connect with people that I was working with and just more centered. And so I continued to go week after week, and I began to notice that the pain I was having with my periods was going away, and that I didn't have a lot of the irritability and insomnia that I would have for a couple of weeks before it was due. That the acne, I used to have a really vicious acne before my period. was going away, that the chocolate cravings were reduced considerably, and that I didn't have the heavy bleeding. I used to have to go to bed for a couple of days when I was really young with my period, but I began to see that wasn't normal, and that it wasn't normal for me to need pain relievers, like over-the-counter pain relievers. Mm-hmm.
You use the word normal.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you find this in your practice, but I see it in mine, where women come in and I ask them about their period, and they go, well, it's normal. I've got this moodiness prior to it, and then, I've got clots, and, it's painful for a couple of days. And what I've come to discover is that's actually not normal. It's common, and maybe their girlfriends and their sisters, and maybe their mom have periods like that. But just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal.
That's right. And that's one of the things that I woke up to in this whole process of being treated. And as I felt more and more drawn to practice Chinese medicine, that's one of the things that I wanted to focus on with my patients, is that a painful period, that PMS, is not normal. I still find myself saying that to my patients now, that it's what we're used to, and there's all these things that are supposed to address it because it's such a common problem, just as you just said, Michael, but it's not normal, and it doesn't have to be. And it's really fun to work with a woman for a few weeks and then have her next period come, and the flow is smooth and there's no cramping. And just yesterday, 2 or 3 people said I didn't have any irritability. And
it's a little mind-blowing.
Great. Yeah, and that's supposed to be normal. That's normal. But it's so generational. It's so generational because a lot of us were raised by mothers who had PMS and painful periods at a time when women weren't, well, maybe not women not talking to each other. I think women were talking to each other, but it was something we weren't supposed to talk about. So it's very generational, I think. And I hope we continue to see our whole awareness around what's normal during a period evolve.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing changes with that in this next generation?
Slowly. It's slow. Yeah, I think we'll have to see. It's pretty slow, but one on one at a time. It's,
And this is a big piece of the work that you do, is having these conversations.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I think it's worth the time, but the conversation isn't the only part. It's really important to me that the patient has her own experience of this change. It's not enough for me to talk about it, but that I've got to be able to offer her some very time-tested, reliable treatment methods to help her have that experience. But I find it's very empowering when they start. It helps a woman be able to experience her own self-healing capacity when she sees that there are certain things she can do with her diet and with the acupuncture treatments and with exercise and better sleep that's going to make a qualitative change in her whole menstrual experience.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code Qiological for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. What are some of the things that women can do to help promote their own self-healing? And it sounds like deeper awareness of their own incarnate experience with being a woman here.
Well, that's a benefit of the process, I think, of the time. I mean, when you spend time making sure that you prepare yourself a meal or meals, 2 or 3 meals a day with fresh food that's not processed, and take time to enjoy a cup of red raspberry leaf tea instead of popping ibuprofen. I don't know if I'm supposed to mention specific pharmaceuticals, but we know which ones everybody uses. I don't have to say by name.
No, we can talk about anything we want here.
But when you spend the time to make yourself some red raspberry leaf tea with some nettle and sit down and drink it calmly or sip it throughout the day, and you notice that you're not having a lot of menstrual cramps, that's going to open your eyes to what your body can do. And as it did for me, just raised my level of curiosity about what else was possible.
Do you see women being curious about their health?
Yes. Oh, yes, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I think as East Asian medicine practitioners, we offer a lot in that area. We offer a lot of opportunity for that interest to develop, and we kind of can share in that process with our patients. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not a quick fix, is it?
No, and what I find myself always thinking about, and when it's appropriate, talking with patients about the fact that this isn't the kind of medicine where you just come in, I place the needles, you lay on the table, you get up and you go back and you do everything else you're doing. You don't change your lifestyle habits. And so then you go out, then you go have some fast food or some candy, or you drink a few cups of coffee a day and say, I'm going to have my acupuncture. It's a partnership. So I'm not fixing anything. I'm assisting in your process of experiencing better health, because that was the process for me. And I'm committed to that because that's how I came to this. So there may be other ways that other people would explain this, other practitioners would explain or approach this, but most of the colleagues I have a similar idea that we're supporting and working in partnership with you being able to take good care of yourself.
Yes, I would agree from my experience of doing clinical work as well. And I don't know if I want to say we're teachers and educators. I like your word of partners, because there's a give and a take, and there's a sense of exploration that goes with the process. And it's not necessarily a linear process either. Sometimes folks, I'll do an acupuncture treatment, they have that moment of quietude, they go out with a slightly different perspective in some way, and they start noticing things about their relationships or about their body or about how food affects them.
Right.
That they hadn't noticed before.
Right. And I think that bit of deep relaxation and quiet and experience of balance is initiates and supports a person kind of getting off that merry-go-round where they know they don't feel well, they know their life's not the way they would like it to be, their day is stressful and crazy and they're fighting with everybody. I had somebody like that the other day, or I usually have somebody in that situation every day.
Mm-hmm.
But just that period of quiet kind of makes that chaos stop long enough that they can say, whoa, maybe I need to try some things differently. And I find most of the people I see are pretty open to trying to extend the benefit of the treatment by doing some things differently in between appointments.
What are some ways that they can extend that benefit from the treatment? What are there suggestions or things you talk about, or things that you've heard your patients come in and say, yeah, I'm doing this or that, and it seems to really help?
Well, yeah, I'm always learning about and always trying to study about different ways that you can extend the benefits of the treatments. And my patients teach me a lot too, especially about different ways of eating. Like lately, I've had a lot of people curious about paleo diets and
Mm-hmm.
doing them for short periods of time and coming back and telling me about how much better they feel because their digestive systems are working better. They feel more energy. They feel better when they wake up in the morning and they're less stressed out and irritable.
Mm-hmm. What is it you think about a diet like paleo? You just brought that one up. What is it about that diet in particular that seems to bring this kind of thing about? Have you got a sense of that?
I'm still checking it out. I think I can only answer that question generally. I don't feel qualified to speak. There's so many sources of information, but from what I'm beginning to understand is that a diet like that eliminates a lot of the foods that cause cellular inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from my general understanding, a lot of the issues we have with digestion, with mood, with thought process, with sleep, with quality of our blood is impacted by the level of cellular inflammation. And when cells are inflamed, they can't function well. And when they don't function well, our organs don't function well, our chi doesn't flow well, our blood doesn't nourish us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for many people the diet is beneficial because it removes that inflammation and it removes those triggers that cause cells to not function properly. Is that what you how you understand it?
Yeah, like you, I find that I learn a huge amount from my patients in the clinic, which isn't to say that I don't spend time reading and studying on my own outside. But the things that people come in with, and they say, I've been doing this and I'm getting this result, or the opposite is I'm eating all this chocolate and I feel awful. But there's a lot that I find that I learn from my patients. And when it comes to diet, and I've been looking quite a bit at some of the more Western metabolic science these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really agree with you that this issue of inflammation is pretty huge. Now, what's interesting for me is when I take it and then look at it through the lens of Chinese medicine. We're looking at damp heat, which is a real mischief maker. And because it really disrupts lots of the normal physiologic processes. Mm-hmm. So we'll call it damp heat in Chinese, but I think it translates really well as inflammation from a Western point of view.
True. And that's interesting because I just had kind of flashed on the one time the acupuncturist I saw all those years ago really had a long conversation with me, was about my diet. He took my pulse and he said, too much sugar. You're eating sugar. How much sugar are you eating? you're eating more than that. When I told him, and he gave me this long lecture about how sugar creates mucus, and mucus is damp and it clogs up the organs and makes everything move more slowly, and then it makes you more hot inside. Stop eating sugar. If you just practice your Tai Chi and stop eating that sugar, and you won't be so damp. And I remember he gave me congee. He gave me a mix of some damp clearing herbs in the congee and told me to have that for breakfast every day for a few weeks. And he would keep checking my pulse to see if it was changing, that I would have less mucus, he said. And so, yeah, even way back then, he talked to me about it.
Right.
Stop having sugar.
Stop having sugar. Well, and more, especially as we look at sugar and insulin response and how it creates more fat in the body and how it raises cholesterol and things like that, it really makes sense to back off of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In your work with women's health and reproduction and that sort of thing, what kind of role do you see getting rid of sugar playing? I mean, how many people are dealing with this as part of the problem, I guess is the question.
Oh, many. I would say the majority of the people that I see. And when I began working more closely with people who wanted to conceive babies, all the people I studied with and worked with talked about the importance of encouraging people to eliminate foods that cause that dampness or that phlegmy, heavy, mucusy quality that develops in our body over time when things are so sluggish and inflamed.
How would people recognize if they're damp? I mean, you and I have this Chinese medicine point of view. We can say dampness. We kind of know what it means to us. Mm-hmm. But if you're just a regular person, like here in St. Louis, Missouri, for example, what would your personal experience be if you were damp?
I think I would experience kind of foggy thinking, lack of desire to really move, bloating in my tummy, maybe loose stools, maybe periods of constipation and loose stools, maybe difficulty, like a thickness in the middle of my body, in the waistline, maybe headaches, maybe some sweating when I'm not really exerting myself. But I think a real sluggishness. When you think of
mentally and physically.
Yeah, like a heaviness, like a feeling of heaviness. And so it's like, walk and feel that lightness and you're moving around easily. It feels like it takes effort to move. And we look at, and you can feel kind of a heaviness in your mouth that might feel mixed with some dryness. Feels like your tongue has a heavy, thick coating. Like a lot of people brush that coating or scrape it off their tongue.
That's a pretty good sign of dampness there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So really, any of our listeners here that are experiencing something like this,
or if you have any kind of skin outbreaks that ooze fluid, or if you have acne before your period, even that oozes fluid. Some people have swelling in their hands and feet or ankles and wrists that doesn't resolve easily, or kind of puffiness under the eyes, especially when you wake up in the morning and you wake up feeling really foggy and you think you need coffee to get moving. Sometimes that's just dampness.
So there's a lot of different ways it can manifest. How does dampness interfere with fertility?
Let me think about that a little bit. I see it a lot. It can It can cause the formation of cysts in the ovaries or fibroids in the uterus. It can affect the quality of the blood that needs to nourish the development of your eggs, and then from there nourish your uh, endometrium or your uterine lining, and where an fertilized embryo would implant. It can make your menstrual cycle, the transitions from uh, your period to ovulation, and from ovulation to that second half luteal phase, it can make those transitions be very sluggish and slow and not happen very smoothly.
So maybe women would see what commonly in the Western point of view we'd say is certain kinds of hormone disruption. Would that be a fair characterization?
Partially.
Partially.
But it can also, I think more importantly, it can make the blood too thick and not move very smoothly. And so it's not nourishing you, it's not nourishing your uterus, it's not nourishing your eggs, it can't nourish the developmenting embryo because it's just full of thickness and dirt.
Right.
I was trying to figure out a good word to use for that, but yeah, it can just make the quality of the blood. One of my teachers calls it crappy blood. I like that. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really, and it's sluggish. I mean, there's a real aspect of it being sluggish as well, which means it doesn't nourish the tissues nearly as well as it should.
Right, and not qualitatively as well. And then you just don't have the nutrients available to support all these cellular processes going on. Like so many people come in and want to have a baby, and they think of it as a baby that they're holding in their hands. And that's the right way to think of this whole process. But I sometimes find myself explaining that we're talking about cells. This whole thing is starting with cells. It's not starting, it's the idea of the baby, but we also want to create the conditions so that your cells can do all the different processes and changes that result in a healthy baby.
Right. You know, I see this a lot in my practice too. Women come in and they're so focused on getting pregnant. It seems to me they need some reminding that, well, getting pregnant is one step in helping to create a healthy, robust, vital life for your child.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And there's plenty of ways of getting pregnant, but I'm not sure that all of those necessarily help to create a vital, robust life for the next generation.
Well, that's a really good point. And I think over the years, I've been doing this work for 15 years and studying and learning all the time. That part of it feels important to me. But I feel that when I work with people now, I used to, just to step back for a minute, I used to focus on the end point. Let's help this person have a baby. And when I was starting out, I thought, okay, what points do I need to be doing? What kind of herb formulas do I need to be giving? And I was so focused on trying to do everything right but now as I've grown, as I continue to study and learn, I think of my work more as helping the parents, the people who are wanting to bring this child into their lives, helping them create the best possible conditions for a pregnancy to evolve, and a healthy pregnancy and healthy birth, and to a healthy child, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of a lot of my work more as preconception care, that when the conditions are optimal, the pregnancy is going to come out of that. And part of the optimal conditions is for you as the woman or the man feeling like your health and your well-being are in tip-top shape. that the conditions are so much better, and your life force is so much stronger, and your lifestyle is so much healthier, that it's natural that a child would arise out of it. So it's not like I'm trying to, boom, just snap my fingers and do the right points and give the right herbs. And I'm trying to help them create the conditions for it to evolve. And so what that has meant is most of the people I see do conceive on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I support people who are working with fertility centers. And again, that helps create the conditions for a positive result to their IVF or IUI process. But a lot of people I see do conceive on their own after being told that they likely would not be able to.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner, because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing with Chinese medicine. Now, I'm curious. Do you see many men in your practice for working on the fertility issues?
More and more.
More and more. I wanted to bring this up. I just want to run this by you. I mean, by and large, I see women, and I'll ask about the man and his health and sperm count and all that other stuff. But the men, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen a man come in, even though it sounds to me that maybe the problem is not on the woman's side. It might be more on the man's side. Of course, it's rarely just one or the other.
Well, I mean, are you saying you asked to see the man? And
Well, sometimes I'd like to, or at least know what's going on with the man. But sometimes the report that I get back from the woman is, yeah, there's some issues with his sperm, there's motility or morphology or count, that kind of thing. But the men seem very reluctant to come in.
oh, that's interesting, because I don't always see that. I mean, occasionally I've worked with someone who came in a few times and then brought their partner or husband in, and he might not necessarily see the benefit of the treatment and decides he doesn't really want to continue. Sometimes I've had lots of people who come in on their own and their husbands may not even know they're coming. But I think if it's taking a while for a woman to conceive, especially in cases where they have had a baby and they're trying to have a second one, it's not happening, then it's really important to pay attention to what's going on with the man.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even worked with some people who, if their husbands won't come in, that they at least have them take certain supplements and make changes in their diet and change their sleep habits and stop drinking coffee, stop doing the things that make the growth and development of healthy sperm difficult, and start doing things that nourish the development of healthy sperm.
Can you give us a couple examples of what men can do to help with that, just on their own? without having to come see an acupuncturist?
Well, I really think it's important for them to see an
They should
acupuncturist,
go get some help that way. Mm-hmm.
but pay attention to how they're sleeping, um, uh, eliminating coffee, eliminating sugar. Watch, we read a lot about the effect of EMFs and cell phones in the pockets and laptops on.
Really? Cell phones in the pockets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of concern about how constant exposure to devices affects the cellular formation of sperm. I'm not an expert on that, but there's lots of information available about it. But I wanted to say one other thing about men is that I've really been very impressed with the commitment that some of these younger guys have to doing what they need to do to have families. I mean, it's not like, there's been several couples I've worked with where it's not, the woman's not the only one who's like driven to get pregnant. A lot of times, like, I've seen guys cry about it. Especially if there's been a miscarriage or if another month comes around and the woman's period has come. I mean, I've been really impressed with the desire they have to be fathers, and that influences their willingness to have treatments. I have some guys I work with who make the appointments for their wives.
Wow.
And their own appointment and bring them in. And yeah, I've seen a lot of cases where they're willing to do whatever they need to do. I think it might just be a question of individual case or...
Perhaps, or you're on the East Coast. Things are a little different on the East Coast than they are here in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
In terms of thinking and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's great that guys actually sometimes make the appointment.
Make the appointments and sometimes come on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're really not doing work that is, how do I say it? Like push a few buttons and set things right, and then you get a baby. You're treating people more as ecosystems, it sounds like.
I see better results that way. I feel the results are, and faster.
And faster.
And I think that Chinese medicine allows us to do this because it's not the kind of medicine, or I'll say East Asian medicine, which is the more widely used term, is not when you're practicing correctly, you're not just doing automatic protocols on the same treatments for every person at the same time. Yeah, one of the things that attracted me to this practice is that the foundation of our work is to be able to assess and diagnose and develop a treatment program that's individualized for the person.
Yeah.
It's based on solid foundation of theory and practice, but there are methods for individualizing it. And when we do that, that's when we get good results.
Absolutely. This is one of the things that has also really drawn me to Chinese medicine and keeps me deeply involved with it, is that everyone's looked at as an individual. There is no off-the-shelf protocol that's going to work for everybody. Right. Everybody's different. And the way the medicine is practiced best and the way it's most effective, like you mentioned, is when we really look at an individual and help that individual with the specifics that they need.
Yeah, and that means spending time with the person, figuring out what their digestion's like, if they tend to feel hot, if they feel cold, if they feel sluggish, or if they feel hyper all the time, or if they have any aches or pains, where are they located? And in women, when they want to have a baby, we spend a lot of time talking about what their menstrual cycles are like, what the flow of the blood is, what the ovulation, can they feel themselves ovulating? Do they have a sense? Do they have signs of ovulation? Do they have a stronger libido at their most fertile time? Do they notice change in cervical mucus? And I talk to my patients about that. And then afterwards, do they, what's, well, there's other techniques I might recommend, like keeping track of your temperature if it's not too stressful for you, especially in that second half of the cycle. Are the temperatures staying up? Are you noticing back pain? Are you having any spotting? When your period starts, do you have spotting, or just does it start right up? All these factors play a role in how we determine how best to help.
Mm-hmm. For our listeners who may not actually be sure what a normal period should be like, could you run over that with us for a moment?
Just the period?
Yeah, what should a normal period be like? A lot of women think normal is pain and clotty and they're moody as all get out prior to it. What does an actual good regulated period look and feel like?
Well, and again, it's really great to hear my patients describe a normal period after months or years of painful ones, and to find out that they could have a period that starts smoothly with no cramping, that doesn't have any clotting, that the blood isn't too watery and not too thick or mucousy, that it's nice, bright, healthy red color, not too purple, not brown and dry. Again, that there's no pain before, during, or at the end of the period. That they don't, that when a normal period usually won't involve the premenstrual signs like breast tenderness or sugar cravings or migraine headaches or back pain, low back pain, or insomnia, night sweating. All that's resolved when your period's normalizing. And that it's occurring at 28 to 30 day cycles, that it's not every 23 days and not every 40 or 50 days, but 28 to 30, and that there's roughly 14 days between ovulation and the onset of the period.
Mm-hmm. Have you found women who are having trouble with getting pregnant that when their periods become more regulated, that their fertility also changes?
Oh yeah, yeah. But it's all the stages of it. It's all the stages of the whole cycle when they become more regulated, and it's a lot of specifics to go into here, but it's something that we pay attention to. Yeah, every phase of the cycle. And a lot of the medical doctors don't really rely too much on basal body temperature data, but for Chinese medicine practitioners, it's extremely helpful for us. And there are many apps and online programs now that make it really easy to keep track of your basal body temperature. There are many that keep track of your cycle and kind of predict when you should be ovulating and having a period, but the actual data in a graph of a basal body temperature or BBT chart is very helpful for us to tell us a lot about your the internal transitions of all the phases of the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Chinese medicine practitioner trained in assisting women who want to conceive, it's really important for us to be able to look at a BBT chart and be able to tell where there might be some areas of irregularity, or where a chart that looks really good, and you can even see where there may have been some early conceptions. I mean, pregnancies and early losses from a chart.
You can actually read that off a BBT.
You can get a good sense of it. But and some people, I've been able to look at their chart and see, oh, that's a pregnancy. That's a chart that you see when someone's pregnant. But then their period comes, so something's off.
Mm.
And then you take into account your other elements of your Chinese medicine diagnosis to try to figure out where there may be a problem. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today in terms of thinking about reproductive health, or even just health in general, cultivating that fertile field, so to speak?
I feel that living a fertile life is a lifelong process. It's not just wanting to have a baby. It's wanting to have a rich, full life, being able to live to your potential, and to know how to encourage your own well-being and support others and your family and your friends, your community, and attaining high level of well-being. And so that's what I try to do one-on-one with my patients. And I really, again, feel committed to sharing all the gifts that Chinese medicine has for our reproductive health with not just women who want to have babies, but women who are going through menopause or approaching menopause. Again, Chinese medicine is very helpful and very balancing during this topsy-turvy phase of life that goes on for many years. And there's much we have to offer. And I really feel committed to offering my services to women in that situation, because I think far too many of us are moving to that phase without enough awareness of what's happening to us. And so,
well, maybe we can have you back another time to talk about that, because that's a whole topic all in its own, and a whole different phase of life. And I love your thoughts about not just fertility and getting pregnant, but living a fertile life, living a life that actually allows us to bring forth, the goodness that we're here for,
yes.
and what we have to offer.
Yes.
That's powerful.
And I get a lot of joy from working with women who I may have assisted for 3, 4, 5, 6 months before they conceive, and then they continue to come in when they conceive, and I work with them until the baby comes. And it feels really important to them and to me to meet this new person, and I get a lot of joy from that. I get lots of people send me, keep in touch. And I also really feel and have seen many patients kind of transform themselves through this whole journey of self-care and attention they're able to give themselves to get ready to be pregnant. And by the time the baby comes, they're in a lot better place to be parents. They have a lot to teach their children about self-care and their own intuition and focus and things like that. I really like seeing that.
Sounds to me like a fertile life is not necessarily a medical condition.
Yes, it's much richer than that. Much. And it's always great to talk with you. And thank you so much.
Always a delight to talk with you. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you too, Michael. I'm very happy you could do this.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed this vintage Everyday Acupuncture Podcast conversation. There are 80 episodes, and you can download them to your podcast player from Apple or wherever you go to get your podcasts. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.